Everybody, to the Wellness Crusaders show. I'm Patty Reese, and I'm here with my lovely co-hosts Laurie Gagan and Jessica Endicott. We're so happy you're here, and we're going to just share our mission. Our mission is to educate and empower you to make informed choices for your health, the health of our children, our communities, and our earth. We are committed to fostering a world where the balance between human health and environmental stewardship is respected and nurtured. Join us in this holistic and transformative journey as we work together to create a healthier, more harmonious world for all. Please join the crusade. So I'm going to pass this along to you, Laurie, to share our waiver disclaimer, and then we'll
Thank
get
you, ladies.
Mhm.
So just a quick few disclaimers for our listeners is that really the listeners understand that the role of a health coach is not to prescribe or assess micro or macronutrient levels or other physical or mental ailments of the human body. Rather, the coach is a mentor and a guide who has been trained in holistic health coaching to help clients positive, sustainable lifestyle changes. The listener understands that we are not acting in the capacity of a doctor, a licensed dietitian, a licensed nutritionist, a psychologist, or any other licensed or registered professionals, and that the advice given by the coach is not meant to take the place of advice by these professionals. If the listener is under care of a professional or currently using prescription medications, the client should discuss any dietary changes or potential dietary supplements with his or her doctor and should never discontinue any prescription medications without first consulting his or her doctor. The listener understands that the information mentioned in our talks should not be seen as medical or nursing advice and is not meant to take the place of seeing a licensed health professional. So, welcome, ladies.
Hello, girls.
It's so good to see both of you again.
Oh my gosh, I'm super excited on this talk. I know we've been talking really about the different types of amino acids that really come from protein foods and some plants and seeds, and talking about the different ones out there that really help the emotional brain. And I met with a doctor who we're all going to be interviewing him on the third Thursday of May. And I'm super excited about interviewing him. His name is Dr. Brian Menick. And Dr. Brian Menick and his Utah physicians are basically talking about the dangers of these harmful like toxins. And he is actually, him and his group, they are suing the state of Utah because of what is happening in the Great Salt Lake. And last night I read through the lawsuit and it's pretty horrific. And things I didn't know because I wasn't doing any research on the Great Salt Lake and I didn't really know that much about it. But basically what's happening is with the water depletion, because the water is being offset to all of these new communities with all the new developers, that as the water goes down in the Great Salt Lake, the water consists of mercury, arsenic, aluminum, Roundup, and other pesticides that they are spraying. And basically what's happening is as the water starts evaporating and it becomes like this dust. And when the winds blow, not only is it harming the marine life and all of the birds that flock in from season to season, that dust is being distributed to all of the people who live in those communities. And it's all of the toxins that we discuss on our show, the dangers to the immune system. So I'm really quite excited about interviewing him and listening to what he has to say. So today
What we can do about it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And what we can do about it, and then our listeners and what they could do to support him, not only from a a monetary perspective, even though I have to say $5 with his group goes a long way.
Mhm.
But what we can do to campaign to educate, our neighbors,
Right.
because there's so many people in that surrounding. I have friends. I know Jessica, you're pretty close there. I have a lot of people that I know that are around the Salt Lake and never really even knew about the heavy metals that was settling, let alone the pesticides for the mosquitoes that they were spraying.
Mm.
Well,
So,
that makes sense as to why my heavy metals were so high when we did
right.
the legal scan. Yeah.
And then you think about all those metals that land in the water filtration systems, and we have no idea what the municipalities of every different county is able to filter out. I will tell you in the state of Utah, and I just know this because 4 or 5 years ago, I did an organic workshop and I had pretty much the whole team from Park City come down and I had asked them, do they test the water for glyphosate? And their answer was the Utah does not say it's not mandatory. They could volunteer to do that. She goes, but you're going to really be hard pressed to find that. So something really disturbing to me that happened over the past month is we tested a school's water, and I won't name the school, and it was for glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in water. And the water filtration system that I got a sample out of came through an LK water dispenser. So it wasn't coming out of the drinking fountain, which would be a culinary water for which, whatever municipality that the school is. It was actually being filtered from an LK water. And it tested positive within the 25 percentile that it had glyphosate. Now you think of all of the kids that are drinking the water, and even if it's worse if they're just drinking out of a water fountain. But then you think of what I just said as far as for if there's schools out there in American Fork and Spanish Fork and Syracuse and Payson and Nephi and all of those surrounding communities, now coupled with all of the heavy metals that are going into the water systems, we know that it can't all be filtered out. And there's no amount of chlorine, which is also a toxin because it's got to kill the bacteria in the water.
Right.
There's no amount of chemicals that is going to kill off the glyphosate in the water.
Well, yeah, you
And-
kill chemicals with chemicals. It's
Right, right. And the interesting thing that when I was talking with Dr. Brian yesterday, when I met him, is we got into talking about the PFAS, the forever chemicals. And
Yes.
basically, he is saying that with the PFAS, that you have the heavy metals that are able to stick with the glyphosate that is in your body, not just the heavy metals, but mycotoxins. And then they're just kind of sticking into a cell membrane or into the gut membrane. And the uptick in colon cancer alone, again, in the state of Utah, is on the rise. So I'm looking forward to interviewing him with the three of you. But Patty, why don't you get started? We're talking today about the importance of nutrient-dense foods and how most conventional medicine doctors out there aren't making the connection to root cause, gut-brain axis. When children, teenagers, young adults, older adults, our grandparents, our great-grandparents aren't getting enough amino acids from these nutrient-dense foods because they don't contain them, or not a lot of them, in today's conventional farming methods.
Right.
That we see that the ADD, ADHD, anxiety, which I hate that word, depression, which I hate that word, we see the uptick in teenage suicide, how everything is on the rise. And in the state of Utah, 1 out of every 31 boys are now diagnosed with autism. And it's not that anything has changed. I mean, the thing about it is your DNA doesn't change. But what are these kids being fed in utero, these babies? And then when they come out, Are they getting the Gerber baby food that we already know is being tested for glyphosate and all that stuff, or the General Mills cereals? Because parents just don't know and they don't have enough time to do the research that you and Jessica and myself and even Kathleen, who's not with us today, that the amount of hours that we spend researching. But the most conventional medicine doctors aren't talking about it. They always want to go back to big pharma. And that's the importance of what we are all doing, how really big pharma is not the answer. And some, I do believe that there are times when big pharma, Western and Eastern have to marry, just like you, Patty. You break a foot. Obviously, you're not going to be rubbing cilantro on your ankle in order to heal it. You have to go to urgent care. You have to go to the emergency room because you need that type of Western medicine. That's what Western medicine was designed to do, is
Absolutely.
to do exactly what it was doing. But now, big pharma thinks that, oh, well, let me hand you this magic pill
hmm
and it's going to fix you. And we know it's not going to fix them because anxiety is one of the leading illnesses, the leading emotional illnesses that we are challenged with, not only in Utah, but in America. So, Patty, why don't we just start with you and why
Okay.
don't you
Well,
talk about the foods?
there's a lot that I want to say, so I'm not sure where, but I wanted to come back to what you originally started talking about with the environment and the toxins that we're exposed to, because we are exposed to them. We're trying to work on, as best as we can, the legislature and trying to get things changed for us and waking people up. But the best thing we can do is look at our lifestyle and look what we're putting into our bodies and how we can offset these toxins with our food and with our lifestyle, because no question anxiety is on the rise. And anxiety, there's lots of contributors to it, but one of the main contributors to anxiety is low serotonin, right? So when serotonin starts dropping, anxiety starts going up.
And can you, for the listeners who really have not ever heard about serotonin, mostly
Mhm.
because conventional medicine's not talking about it,
Mhm.
can you just explain like a little bit about serotonin and, where it's made and what it's used for?
Well, serotonin is one of our major neurotransmitters, and it is most of it's produced in the gut,
Yeah,
correct?
like 95% of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, a lot of it's produced in the gut. I'm sure there's some more in the brain as well too. So when you think about what we're eating, and if we're not getting in the foods that actually feed serotonin, in order for serotonin to be balanced, we need to feed it. It doesn't come from junk food. It doesn't come even from SSRIs. And I know our topic today is SSRIs versus.
Oh, I do want to get into talking about that once we get through the food.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing. So the SSRIs people are taking them for, getting serotonin uptake, but it's just a band-aid. What we really need to do is feed our brain and our gut so that our serotonin lifts on its own. Because otherwise we keep putting band-aids on, whether it's an SSRI, whether it's, a glass of wine or, some marijuana or whatever else we do to boost it up, because those do initially work.
Does
And then
does
they drop.
alcohol boost it up as well?
Yes.
Okay, and then
That's why people
we
love
see the uptick
alcohol.
of like alcohol right now as well.
Right. Right. Because
Okay.
what happens is it jumps it up. Right. So does weed. So people feel more relaxed. They have a happier outlook, and then it drops right down again.
Do you think that's why one glass of wine is not enough? So then people start reaching for that second glass of wine because their serotonin after the wine wears off starts to plummet?
Yes, that's definitely one reason. But if they're not
Okay.
eating well, if they're not getting in the protein from their food and the fat and the veggies, then their brain is still looking to, support that serotonin lift.
Right.
They want to feel all of us want to feel happy and joyous. And
Mhm.
serotonin does it. It's our happy neurotransmitter.
Right.
If we're not eating, and this is what's happening with all these young people, right? They're eating crap food. Then you have the environmental stuff slamming them, and their brains are going, boom, I don't know what to do. I don't want to be here anymore. Da 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 da. I'm anxious. And you add the weed in with the sprays and the toxins on the weed, and their poor brains, whether you're a teenager or a 50-year-old smoking weed, right? It's still
Right.
depleting your neurotransmitters and not feeding them. We need to feed our neurotransmitters and feed our brain.
So what kind of foods feed serotonin?
Protein,
Okay. Any type of
salmon,
protein.
chicken, hemp seeds, nut butters, those types of things.
Is it
Eggs.
harder for a vegan to get the protein because they're really not eating protein and they don't really eat eggs as well? And you can only eat so many hemp seeds and so many flax seeds.
It is harder. There's no question about it. I mean, vegans have to work harder to get their protein in. They do. They have to work with more superfoods, spirulina, some of the other superfoods that have a higher protein content. Yeah, they have to work harder at it, but it's doable. I mean, I know there's vegans that, are happy.
Right.
They don't have anxiety, but they've worked hard at getting that protein in through their superfood sources and vegan sources.
So we're talking about foods, but let me just ask a question. What are some examples, Jess or Patty, of serotonin medications? Like, name some names so that people are familiar with the names if they've ever heard their doctor talk about them.
Well, go ahead, Jess.
Prozac, Zoloft,
Lexapro.
Okay. Prozac.
Effexor, yep. Prozac, Zoloft, Effexor.
Well, an Effexor is kind of one of those like multi-medications where it does the dopamine and the serotonin. It's kind of working in different parts of the brain, which brings me to like a really important comment that we are throwing like pharmaceutical drug names out there. It's if you're raising serotonin and serotonin, maybe you're raising it too high, isn't it? It's on a seesaw with the dopamine, which is your focus and your energy, your ability to stay organized, your ability to stay on task. So what happens when somebody's fed an SSRI by some doctor who really doesn't understand amino acids or understand the brain for that matter?
Jess, do you want to do that? Or I'm happy to do it too. So go ahead. Did you want to do it, Jess?
Well, I kind of missed part of the question. Sorry.
So we were talking about the seesaw effect of serotonin and dopamine, and possibly how people who are on pharmaceuticals get into multiple pharmaceuticals because of it. So whoever wants to explain that.
Well, the example is, Adderall. If we look at Adderall, so Adderall, is for ADD, but it's a stimulant. So it raises dopamine for focus. So a lot of these young people and older people that have been on Adderall are taking Adderall to up their dopamine, and their serotonin's dropping. So they may be getting stuff done and more focused, but their serotonin, their happiness and their anxiety is also going up because they do seesaw each other, right? And you would say the same if someone's on Effexor, right? Or they're drinking a lot. So they're raising serotonin. And then, of course, that's depleting, but so is their dopamine. So they're lacking in energy. And, the energy thing could also be mitochondria and adrenals. But when you're depleted in dopamine, you don't have energy.
Right.
You don't have focus. You don't have a drive for life anymore. It's zapping it, which is what we can see, this apathy. So it's a different type of depression. The dopamine depression is a little different than the serotonin depression. The dopamine is apathetic. You don't care, which is, think about our environment, like how we're all wanting to, we're guiding people to wake up and take care of their environment and take care of their health and their lives. But if you don't have dopamine, it's really hard to do that. And you need to
Right.
feed that with good protein and fat, aminos.
And
Yeah, and I think it's important to, like, we're talking about the depletion of it too. So these
Right.
things are depleting it. Naturally, these neurotransmitters are supposed to be recycled.
Yes.
So they should be recycled, but these types of foods and prescriptions are depleting it. So the heavy metals, the toxins, the alcohol, the substance use, and
The Red Bulls.
Yes, the Red Bulls, the coffee, like all of these things are depleting those levels. So they're not recycling. And so that's why it's important to eat nutrient dense food and
Right.
also use the aminos to support that and replenish it so that they're not depleted.
so Jessica, you hit on a really good point. So why don't one of the two of you talk about it and then I'll just kind of chime in. So when someone is giving an SSRI, you just hit a key word. It's not replenishing your serotonin or 5-HTP. So when someone takes an SSRI, it's not like it's a magic pill where they're really actually taking serotonin and they're boosting serotonin levels. So when they take an SSRI, what happens in the brain synapse? Is it creating more serotonin or is it blocking it so that it's lasting in the little vesicle longer?
So my understanding is that it's keeping it from being released. And so it's just utilizing what's already there, but it's never replenishing it.
Right. So it's it's hanging out in that little space that is known as a synapse.
Mm-hmm.
And Big Pharma thinks, which we know is not working because anxiety is still on the rise. And, 75% of the people that are on SSRIs don't feel any relief. But when it's hanging out and it's floating in that, the water of the little synapse. So basically, what Big Pharma believes is that just hanging out in the little water vesicle, that it's going to actually make somebody feel better. But if the gut is broke and you don't have enough serotonin to hang out in the little vesicle, an SSRI can't work. Is that correct? So even if somebody is on an SSRI, would they still be able to feed their brain protein foods, serotonin foods, to even help boost more serotonin so that they don't have to go up in the milligram straight of an SSRI?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And it's not just feeding the serotonin, it's feeding other, protein feeds our tissues, our bones, it balances our blood sugar. So it's critical for people to get protein in. Critical 2 to 3 times a day.
Okay. And then how often should someone feed the brain? And then we can talk about when somebody takes a tryptophan, which is the precursor to 5-HTP, we'll kind of talk about the methylation pathway. How often does someone taking a supplement, how long do those amino acids last? How long is the tryptophan going to last in the body from eating protein? Do they eat every couple hours? Is it every 4 hours?
Jess?
Because obviously if I eat an egg in the morning, I really am not going to expect my serotonin levels at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to be as good as they are within a couple, 2, 3, 4 hours right after I have that egg, and my body is still digesting and nourishing and my body with the nutrients from that.
Right. And you're exposed to different kind of stressors during the day too. And so when we have stressors and traumas, those are going to deplete them as well. So we recommend every 3 to 4 hours eating protein. and eating half of your body's weight in grams per day. So splitting that out. So if I weigh 200 pounds, I'm going to eat 100 grams of protein, and I'm going to divide that 3 to 4 times during the day.
Okay. And then, Jess, where does meditation, like a quick meditation, come in? Like if you feel like you've gone too long without eating, or you're in a crunch at work, or you're driving in the car and you can't pull over for food, what can someone do if they start feeling that they're getting a little bit of angst? And for those listeners out there, you know, when I'm getting ready for this podcast, like Jessica and Patty just took some amino acids, and I didn't have time to take mine. But basically, with my eyes open, I was trying to take some breaths in, one, because I knew I didn't take it. But what are some of the things that someone can do if they really feel that they've gone too long without feeding their brain?
Yeah. So, and if they don't have aminos available, they can use
Right.
Yep, they can use their breath, because their breath is going to help to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And so using your breath, inhaling through your nose, is going to be more relaxing than breathing through your mouth, because as you're breathing through your mouth, that's more stressful. You're not filtering the oxygen. So breathing through your nose deep down into your abdomen, feeling the expansion down into your abdomen. So taking a really nice, big, deep breath instead of a chest breath, which this is where a lot of us breathe, especially when we're stressed out, but focusing on that breath, feeling it come in, and then counting your exhale, trying to expand your exhale up to 10 seconds, 10 counts, because the exhale is going to help calm you down. So breathing in through your nose, and then you can do pursed lips. So like you're blowing out of a straw. That's going to give you more control to try and focus on getting to 10 counts of exhaling. And if you 10 counts, that's okay. Just as long as many counts as you can get. If you can only get 4, then the next breath, try to extend it to 6, and then try to extend it to 10. But even just 3 deep breaths is going to create a reset.
Right.
And I like that, because it's simple in this hectic world that we're all living in, where we're running from place to place. 3 seconds, I mean, 3 deep breaths in, and if it's able to reset back to your parasympathetic, your calm and rest and digest, I mean, pretty much everybody, I mean, you're breathing anyway. Why not just concentrate on the 3 breaths for that?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that. And Jess, and then once you do relax, go get some food. Because you still need to feed the brain. And when the blood sugar goes off, you go off. So, and that's, you know, one of the things I try to do is have snacks available, like have some nuts available or some meat sticks, you know, things that you can just grab if you don't have your meal set up yet. But again, this is part of, as I mentioned earlier, coming back to, you know, caring for ourselves so that we can feed our brains for anxiety, but also start clearing out some of these toxins we're bringing in. You know, that's part of eating nutrient dense foods, because they do help clear toxins and help support our liver, which is clearing toxins. Because right now we're not going to get away from some of the poisons that are out there. We're doing the best that we can. And the best we can do is to eat nutrient dense food and get organic food. Spend your money on your food and your health, because you don't get that back.
Exactly.
So Patty, when you're a holistic chef, lucky you, when you're educating people about feeding the brain first, what are some of the things that you talk about when it comes to food and building up serotonin?
Well, again, that's looking at, and generally I look at it for the week. Like if I'm looking at what protein foods I have for the week, I may have 2 to 3 different types of proteins that I buy. Like we bought a big thing of turkey this week. So I actually made a really great meatloaf with a bunch of veggies in it. And we're going to make it again because people kept coming over and eat, and we've been feeding them. It's just one of the things we do. But you can make burgers from it too. So that's one thing. We bought some frozen salmon. That's another one. We have small cans. I mean, the other day for lunch, I was so hungry. I went a little bit past those 4 hours, and I opened up a can of mackerel. And I had,
I do that.
I think I had some microgreens. So microgreens are another nutrient dense food that, we don't have to have a fancy meal, but we do have to feed our brain, and we do have to sit and breathe while we're eating if we can. Obviously, if you're moving quick, but even just to sit down for a couple minutes and allow your body to chew and digest your food, you're going to absorb more of that.
Okay, which basically, like Jessica was saying, puts you back into the parasympathetic. And I mean, how
Mhm.
many of us, and I'm equally as guilty because I'm trying to cram too much in my day. We sit and we try to eat, and maybe we're having a phone conversation. I was doing that this afternoon when I was driving down to Salt Lake. I thought I had swallowed my food, and then I got on a call, and of course, I still had a little piece of granola that got stuck, and then I started coughing. But I mean, that's the difficult thing. I mean, if it's happening to us,
Right.
we know that it's happening to moms and dads and grandparents. But okay, so let's fast track back. I have actually, Leighton's going to put uh, some healthy foods for both dopamine and serotonin up in a few minutes, and I just want to talk about that. But let's go back to talking about SSRIs versus nutrient-dense foods and amino acids. So let's talk about, Jess, you want to talk a little bit about what 5-HTP and what tryptophan is and how they differ?
Yeah, so tryptophan converts to 5-HTP, and then 5-HTP converts to serotonin, and serotonin converts to melatonin.
So is that the stuff that's like found in turkey? Like
Yep,
when
so
you eat too much turkey at Thanksgiving, everybody's always saying, "Oh my God, I feel so relaxed."
Exactly. Yep, it is. It is what's found in turkey. It's also found in some other foods too. And it's what does the whole conversion. So if we're just taking melatonin, we're skipping that whole conversion, and that conversion is necessary. It's a necessary process for our body. So a lot of people, are just they're defaulting to melatonin. Melatonin does have a time and a place, but to take it every single night, you're stopping your body's natural ability to be able to produce it.
Absolutely.
And we need that. We need those cycles because your body goes through that cycle throughout the day. So when you wake up, you have the serotonin. So that serotonin is what's driving you throughout your day, keeping you alert and keeping you awake. And as it starts to get closer to bedtime, that conversion is starting to happen to the melatonin so that you can sleep at night.
So if somebody takes melatonin and they decide, like, maybe I'm not going to take melatonin every single night, would they start taking tryptophan? Would they do a 5-HTP? Would they do it an hour before bed? And again, this isn't any medical advice. It's just we're trying to plant a seed to let you know that there are alternatives to big pharma medicine.
Yeah, so taking tryptophan in the evening time, 5-HTP during the day, both of those are going to be beneficial.
Okay, and why do you think that conventional medicine doctors don't talk about amino acids? I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm looking for the truth.
It's just a lack of education.
I believe that too.
Yeah, big pharma comes in and says, this is what's going to help. Doctors are not trained to look for the root cause. Yes, they're looking for reasons as to they're looking at the blood and looking for infections and looking for things like that, but they're not trained to look for root cause solutions. They're trying to treat the symptoms.
Exactly.
And so treating symptoms is treating it with a medication.
And I think you just hit it on the spot, the way you said that, Jess, that, they're just really trained to treat it with medication and not look at the underlying cause on there, which to me is sad. I'm very vocal about that because I believe that we're living in a sick care world because in conventional medicine, and again, not all conventional medicine, there are some doctors who have stepped out, who are now looking at root cause, but it's sad that they really don't talk about feeding the brain, about the gut brain axis and how the types of foods. I mean, look at the sugar. People are addicted to sugar, and I was addicted to sugar as a kid. So, I mean, I can speak, I'm just speaking the truth that I love sugar. And it took me a whole entire year to break myself off of sugar.
Yeah.
And I still, from time to time, get big sugar cravings. But I know that in our amino acid class, Christina was very helpful because she said, listen, if you feel that you need a sugary snack, first of all, make sure it's healthy, those good healthy brain balls, fruit, but step away from the table, maybe wash up the dishes, take like a 10 to 20 minute break, and then go back to say, okay, do I necessarily need a huge big cookie like that, or am I over it? And a lot of times now that has worked for me.
Right.
It takes me 20 minutes and I go back and I'm like, I don't really need that now. I'm over it.
And also I want to add too, that when you are feeding your brain the right amount of protein, getting protein in, getting some good fat in and vegetables, your cravings will shift. You
right.
have a little sweet craving, but if the brain is being satiated with what it needs, the cravings go away.
Yep.
Right.
Well, and I got confirmation of that yesterday from my daughter. My daughter was doing a really healthy cleanse and eating nutrient-dense food for 5 days. On day 6, she decides, I'm going to go have a coffee, and I'm going to get a cake pop with it, and I'm going to get Chick-fil-A. And she messages me, and she's like, Mom, I think I'm bipolar. What is wrong with my moods? I've got anxiety, and my cravings are through the roof. And now my daughter's a recovering alcoholic. So she's like, I said to her, I said, honey, I said, how were you feeling prior to this? And she said, I was feeling wonderful. I had so much energy. And that's because she was eating the nutrient dense food. Her cravings had gone away. She was feeling happy. She was getting stuff done. She was motivated. She was living life. And then all of a sudden, she goes and she has her caffeine, she has her cake pop, and she has her Chick-fil-A.
Right. Right. So for those listeners, there are 2 ways to get a hold of us. First of all, we're going to open up the lines in about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to call in and chat with us, or you can send us an email at info@thewellnesscrusaders.com. But we have a picture up on the screen. Hey, Leighton, can you just throw that back up real quick? So this really, and if you send us
bigger, can you make it bigger, Leighton, by any chance,
or just make that the first screen?
No, make the screen bigger. So we can see it. Okay.
Okay. So anybody who wants to either A, call in, or B, send us an email, we will send this to you for free. It was a document that I put together right after I got certified with Dr. Amen as one of his brain certified health coaches. And I was trying to get some foods out there. We talked about the seesaw, the serotonin, and then the dopamine, and how they're in a seesaw effect. Basically meaning that if your doctor is giving you an SSRI, it could be dropping your dopamine. Yes. So you could be unfocused. You may not be organized. You could find yourself kind of in a slump because you don't have any brain energy. And that's because the serotonin is hanging out in that synapse so long, so it's dropping the dopamine. So I put this together to talk about the types of serotonin foods and the types of dopamine foods and what helps. So troubled carbs. Troubled carbs are anything white like cocaine, white like flour, white like rice, white like white pancakes, white like muffins and bagels, and all of the things that these carbohydrates, the simple carbohydrates that immediately turn into sugar in the body. And watch little kids. They could eat a bagel or they can eat a handful of cereal. Next thing you know, they're crazy. I know that because I have he just turned 3. I have a 3-year-old grandson and he loves cereal. Now, yes, it
Oh
is
yeah.
organic and it is gluten-free, but he will eat like a half of a cup of cereal and he is like Ricochet Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter's like, okay, well, we're going to be weaning Will off of the cereal, but you can see that difference. Why? Because it's a faster burn than a slow burn. So the trouble carbs, again, are things like crackers, pancakes, waffles, sweet cereals, muffins, bagels, pasta, white rice, potatoes, and cookies. But there are things that you can do if you are making, your child pancakes or waffles. Use a better type of
Right.
flour, throw some protein powder in it, throw some flaxseed. There's a lot of things that you can do
Mm-hmm.
to make them much more healthy and much more nutrient dense. And then we think of smart carbs, things like sweet potatoes and brown rice and steel cut oatmeals, berries with organic stevia, apples, cherries, red bell peppers, cantaloupe. Why? Because those are more of a slow burn. It takes longer for those foods to go through the digestive tract, to get the nutrients out. So it's not like you're taking a bite of sugar and it's immediately turning into glucose. When you do that, people will also say, listen, I get this hypoglycemia where my blood sugar drops, or I get hyperglycemia because they're getting too much glucose. And then we move over to the dopamine type of foods. And dopamine, again, is for motivation, to keep people emotionally sound, to give the focus. So things that parents can do to give their kid before they're going to school, because we want our kids to arrive at school calm so they're not driving the teachers crazy. But you think of decaf green tea. And why decaf green tea? So the L-theanine is in the green tea and the decaf. So you think of drinking out of or breathing out of a straw. You could probably put a straw in your mouth and you could breathe for a pretty long time, which is the moment that somebody goes to pinch it, that's where the caffeine comes into place. And I'm not saying that caffeine is bad. I mean, I have a cup of caffeinated coffee myself. It is organic and low acid. There are a lot of really good science PubMed articles with a coffee bean and Parkinson's, a coffee bean and Alzheimer's. But the moment you go to pinch that straw, you can no longer breathe out of the straw. And that's really how that prefrontal cortex works, the blood vessels. So when you're feeding the brain green decaf tea, you're actually plumping up the blood vessels to the prefrontal cortex for your kid in the morning, therefore getting more blood flow. The concentration is better. Their focus is better. Their ability to be organized is better. But then we can go to foods like eggs, always organic, pasture fed, cage free. We think of cheeses. We think of nuts. Pack your kid with some nuts in a little baggie and send them to school if they've got some downtime and, they're just feeling tired. I mean, the kid could go in and grab some nuts in the bag. You think of protein powders, that goes back to the pancakes and the waffles, your beans and your seeds and different types of meat and seafood, your high protein veggies like broccoli and spinach, because those are really going to be good for the brain. So if you want to send us an email, info@thewellnesscrusaders.com, or if you want to call in, we will actually send you this document for free. But all right, Jess and Patty, take it away.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great information. Great.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time, I was thinking, do people know what the prefrontal cortex is and what its job is to do? And how it sets us apart from other mammals, because they don't have the prefrontal cortex. It's part of their brain. So it's your drive. It's right here, right? It sits behind your frontal lobe, or it's in your frontal lobe, and it is your reasoning and logic. So it is what drives your bus when you are in control. That is your reasoning and logic center.
Okay, that's a good way to put it on that.
How do you want to expand on that, Laurie?
Well, I would say, and what feeds it, this is where we need to really look at the diet, and really take charge of that, because our brain is just looking for balance. It's looking for this drive, for this ability to be happy, to make decisions, to be able to concentrate in school, to enjoy life, and that only comes if we feed it. Doesn't come from
Right,
junk food. We've already talked about the toxins coming in. So the more we can eat some of this good food, and people, you get into your kitchen.
right,
It
right,
doesn't have to be a fancy meal. And when you said, Lori, I was a chef. I believe everybody's a chef. If you make an egg, you're a chef. That's one of our archetypes that we all have to start connecting with more, because we absolutely, and we're not learning this in school, right? We're not learning how to feed our brains. I mean, I'm still amazed that we are not teaching nutrition in the schools, in the grammar schools, in the high schools, in the colleges, unless you
right,
study nutrition. My niece
right,
is getting her master's in nutrition. Well, she studied that, but
Mhm.
we should all be getting it too. How to
right,
feed our brain and care for ourselves. And
right,
what are some of these foods doing to our brain, creating the brain fog, creating the anxiety and depression? Because again, if we're not feeding our brains, we're probably going to be depressed. We're not going to have energy, and we're probably going to be anxious. And we want to help people not live like that. And if we
right,
want to change our environment, we have to make the changes. We have to
right,
show up at the meetings in the town and things like that. But if we're not eating well, it's hard to do that.
right.
Before you know it, you're having a pizza and your brain isn't getting fed, and you have brain fog, and then your stomach is cramping, and
Then you have that remorse, like, why did I eat that? What? Let's take it back to the soil. I know Kathleen isn't with us.
I know.
Let's take it back to the soil. So we were talking about tryptophan earlier. Tryptophan is, again, it's an amino acid
Hmm.
that you get from food. Let's think about how toxic our soil is.
Hmm.
So, back in the early 1930s, that we had this Dust Bowl. And basically, it's just because the farmers really weren't taking care of the soil. The fertilizers came out and they were tilling the soil. And basically, what it did was created this big dust bowl, kind of really what's happening right now in the Great Salt Lake. We see that. So then, of course, Big Ag came in and said, well, let's go ahead and let's give it this fertilizer. And we look at fertilizer sometimes that it's not the healthiest. It is also contained with chemicals, which is actually what ended up leading to the Great Dust Bowl. So therefore, that nothing was growing in the soil, and it took almost 10 years
Mm.
for that dirt, with that used to be soil, to come back to where the farmers could start planting it. But now what we have is again, we're back to the dirt, because what's happening? Farmer A is saying, oh, listen, I'm going to spray some Roundup. And part of it goes back to when they take government loans, they are obligated, and I'm saying obligated from a legal standpoint, to spray so much Roundup. And, we could put BlackRock into the mix, which BlackRock pretty much owns everything, but they have to spray so much Roundup, N2,4-D, or Liberty, or other pesticides. Why? Because they're trying to kill the bugs and they're trying to kill the weeds that are growing. But what's happening is it's damaging that once nutrient dense
Yeah.
soil where the worms thrived, and it's back to dirt. So the plants themselves have this pathway. And Dr. Zach Bush is really known for talking about the shikimate pathway. And if you think about the shikimate pathway as the roots that go into the soil so that the plants can feed themselves the nutrients that are coming out of the soil. But because the soil has been poisoned with so many chemicals that these farmers are using, the plants themselves are very nutrient deficient.
Right.
So they don't have the tryptophan. Tryptophan, again, is where you find it in, your protein foods and your vegetables, but you're not getting enough of it. And if you don't have that tryptophan, which converts to 5-HTP, which is converting to serotonin, and then we take a look at that uptick in ADD and ADHD and anxiety and depression, but parents think, oh, I'm going to go eat that carrot. Well, the carrot doesn't have anything. And then it becomes nutrition and all of these important minerals that are cofactors
Yes.
to these amino acids like B6 and zinc and magnesium, which are also being depleted, like magnesium's being depleted from the soil. So
there are, let's give options let's give hopeful options too.
Yes,
They're being depleted,
yes.
but there's a whole bunch of places where people can get organic.
That's right. That's where I'm going to.
Okay, good.
So when you think about how the soil has then become dirt, that's where when you go down to these farmers markets,
Yes.
you can actually interview the farmers, the people who are growing. And sometimes they don't know because they're just worker bees there. But it could be something like, listen, I may pass on buying something from you this week, but could you ask the farmer this question? So that's where it goes to regenerative farming, to organic farming. And that gives you options, and it also gives you that hope. Why?
Yes.
Because they're not spraying as many chemicals. I'm not saying that they're not spraying any chemicals. In regenerative farming, it's better than organic farming because, listen, we all know that they're bugs. And then if somebody's not going to come hand pick weeds, there are times that they may be doing some type of an organic spray, but it's way far better than a conventional. So you can find those local farmers. There's 2 local farmers out here by me in Little Charleston, Utah, farming field of 500 people. We've got 2 farmers who feed all of the restaurants their organic microgreens and their organic salads.
Fabulous.
But you really have to be able to ask the question. You look at the conventional, you know that there's number 9 on the item that you're buying, or a number 4 on the peel means that it's organic.
Right.
But the sad thing is that there is now a new sticker, which is called a peel, which is a Bill Gates peel. And a peel is still being sprayed with poison. So you want to stay
avoid
away
that and avoid the 9s, people.
Right.
Make
And
your
it's
choice.
not that you have to eat everything organic. You're just eating organic off the 12 dirtiest foods. I don't know if either one of you want to talk about the dirty dozen. And then it's 5 o'clock right after that. And we can open it up for calls and or emails. Layton, can you put the phone number up, please?
Yeah. So the Dirty Dozen is comes from EWG, Environmental Workers Group, and they took a bunch of produce and they washed it as consumers would wash it, and they did all the cleaners and everything on it, and this is conventional foods. So they took the conventional ones that are not organic, and then they tested them for chemicals. And the number 1 thing on that list is strawberries.
And I love strawberries.
And
I don't eat them out, but I love them.
And I've been allergic to strawberries for years. Well, why? It makes sense now because of the chemicals, because I can eat organic strawberries and I don't have a reaction. When I eat the conventional ones, I get huge sores in my mouth. So no matter how much you're washing your fruits and veggies, you cannot wash off some of these chemicals.
Well, and plus the nutrients aren't in there. So we're talking about nutrient dense foods. So again, spend a little bit more money on your organic produce because your brain and your body and your children's brain and bodies are worth it.
Yep.
And listen, we're a phone call away. We're an email away. Our dial-in number is 385-899-2134. We are all available to take your questions. And there is no question that is dumb. The only dumb question is the question that's not asked. So lean on us.
Dumb questions. We want them all.
Yes, we are the Wellness Crusaders, and we are here for you, Utah. So we hope that you will send us an email and that you will ask the question so that we can give you some guidance for you and your family.
And I wanted Jess to finish up on the Dirty Dozen.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So you can go to the ewg.org website and you can get the list. So they've got the Dirty 12. So there's 12 and they list them by the most contaminated. So strawberries, and then it goes down the list. I can't remember everything. Grapes are on there. I can't think of everything that's,
Well, anything porous. Go
kale,
ahead.
spinach.
Yep.
Yep. And then
Peaches are on there, and I love peaches.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love a good peach in the summertime?
Oh, but they're so much better organic anyway.
They're so delicious
more
organic.
flavor. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yep. And then they've got the Clean 15. So the Clean 15 are the conventional foods that you can purchase that are not organic. So if money is of a concern to you, eat from the Clean 15. At least eat from the Clean 15.
Anything you can peel, like a banana or an avocado or an orange, you're taking the peel off, so you're not getting that in. So that's helpful. But again, it's not that much more. I mean, I bought a bag of delicious organic oranges at Sprouts. I mean, there's more available now. So if we ask for it, the supply and demand starts happening, and that's what we need to start doing.
Right. You know what? Let's talk a little bit about meat, in particular red meat. I don't eat red meat, but let's talk about the meat and really what's happening to the farm animals like the cows, because the cows also are being fed this crap, and it's exactly what it is.
Right.
They're being fed the hay and the alfalfa that's being sprayed with the Roundup and the glyphosate and the Liberty and the 2,4-D and the glufosinate, and they're feeding them to the cows.
Well, any animal that's not being fed its natural food is not producing tryptophan. They're not producing the aminos, and then we eat that, right? It's the same with the vegetable too. But our cows, if cows aren't eating grass, clean grass, they don't make tryptophan.
Right. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. So that's really interesting because now they're doing that fake meat. They're making meat that's fake. So that's not going to have the tryptophan in it. It's not going to have the aminos that we need.
Yeah.
So it's very important too that you are like meat conscious. And
yes,
I know that it's more expensive to buy something that's grass-fed, or you could take it one step further and do a grass-fed, grass-finished. But you have to remember, when you're going to the supermarket and you're picking up food, not only to feed yourself, but to feed your family, you have to ask yourself, what a trip is it going to cost you to go to urgent care or to go to your doctor and find out that you have some underlying autoimmune illness, because the farmers they're just spraying these foods and they're feeding our farm animals. And it's way more expensive than if you take a trip to the emergency room, take a trip to the doctor to be diagnosed, labeled with some horrible autoimmune illness or even cancer. And I know that sounds awful, but the farm animals also get cancer from these toxic poisons that are being sprayed. How much does an oncologist cost? I mean, sometimes spending, $3, $4, or $5 more, and maybe it's smaller portions. You don't need an 8-ounce steak or an 8-ounce burger. Maybe you do a 2 or 3-ounce burger, and then you fill the plate with more greens,
more vegetables, bring them on.
Well, and think about the deductible, right? So if you have a cancer diagnosis, you have to meet that deductible and that out-of-pocket expense first before your expenses are paid. So if that deductible is $3,000, you could have put that towards healthy food. If that deductible or out-of-pocket expense is $10,000, how much healthy food could you have bought for that instead? And then you're also looking at the cost of what the opportunity cost that you're losing out on.
Right.
You're losing out on being available to watch your kids play sports or your grandkids play sports. You're now a burden because you chose, and I'm being very blunt right here, and I might offend some people, but it is your choice. It's your choice to take control of your health and what
Right.
you put into your body
Right.
does ultimately lead to the outcome of your health.
No question.
It's when systemic inflammation becomes chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is 99% of all the diseases out there. And I just want to put this out there before we finish up. I know that we're going to kind of finish up with what our motto is. But a doctor friend of mine, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Pierre Corey wrote the book, The War on Ivermectin. He also is one of the founders with Dr. Paul Merrick on flccc.net. He was one of the doctors saving lives during COVID. But he was in Utah, he was in Congress, and he was fighting to put the label on meats that the farm animals have been vaxxed with mRNA so that the label was on there. And sadly to say, I got a text from him, and Utah lost that battle. So the grocery stores and the markets do not have to label their beef, their chicken with they've been injected with mRNA. And mRNA is a new technology in vaccines that no one knows where it's going to take them down the line. But now you have to make sure that you're buying meat that is labeled. It goes back to
And
farmers.
sourcing. Where are you
Ask your
sourcing?
farmer. There are a lot of really good local butchers, a lot of farmers, and you can interview them. Listen, are you feeding them antibiotics? Are you giving them shots? Do they have the mRNA new technology? And then you have the choice to say no. And that's where we tell the farmers who are doing it, listen, we're not buying our meat from you. Either you change the way you process stuff or go out of business. And that's where we have to stand our ground in order to get our health back.
Right.
Because the sickness in Utah is just overwhelming. We see these children, they don't feel good. We see the emotional brain. We see the weight that they're carrying around. We see the inflammation. Whoever is listening, you have to plant that seed. And we are here to help you.
Right.
So with that said, any other follow-ups, and who wants to end the show?
Well, I think Jess is going to end, but I just want to say that there is a lot of hope. And I would challenge our listeners to just start making some changes and feel the difference. Because when you start eating better, you feel better, you're more hopeful, you sleep better, you're able to show up to life. So I challenge everybody to start making some changes and enjoy their life more and make those choices.
Thank you, Patty. That was good.
Yeah. And if you need help,
Yes.
coaches, we are all coaches. And so you can email info@thewellnesscrusaders.com.
We're doing it and you can do it too.
That's right.
Yep. And it's step by step. It's baby step. It's not going to happen overnight.
No, but you start feeling better and then you make another change. And then all of a sudden life becomes enjoyable again. And that's what we're here for. We're here for hope and harmony in our world.
Yep. Try it for a week. Try it for
Well said. 7 days. That's your challenge.
Yep.
All right, Jess, you want to end up?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So grateful to be here with you guys, with Patty and Laurie, and sharing our mission. And sad that Kathleen couldn't be here. So we just wanted to say that we're committed to empowering lives, inspiring wellness, and providing solutions. And we hope that you will join the crusade.
Thank you. I love you, ladies. Thank you.
Love you all. Love you, everybody.
Yes. All right. Ciao for now.
Ciao for now.